Welcome to the Plant, Grow, Reap podcast.
Welcome to Plant, Grow, Reap. My name is Sophie and today I'm joined by Teagan and Amy, and we'll be diving into the wonderful, chaotic, challenging and rewarding world of being a working mum. To kick things off, can each of you please introduce yourself and your role at Aintree Group and tell us a bit about your kids? Over to you, Teagan.
Hi, my name is Teagan and I'm an assistant manager at Aintree Group. I have two very young children. My daughter, Maisie, is 3 and my son, Henry, is just about to turn 1 in a couple of days. So life is chaotic and it's a juggle every day.
Mm-hmm. I'm Amy. I'm the accounting operations manager at Aintree Group. I just have one child, a 5-year-old named Genevieve. So we're at a very big transition stage coming up with Genevieve starting school next month or in January.
Wow.
So that is sort of like Teagan, like yourself, just a really big juggle between being a mum and having a career that you take seriously, just that constant push-pull.
Well, I'm Sophie, as I said in the beginning, and I'm sort of at the other end of my parenting journey. I've got 4 children. My oldest, Laura, turns 22 on Saturday, which I think might be the same. Is that Henry's birthday?
Tomorrow. So
Oh,
Friday.
tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay, so Laura turns 22. Oliver is 20. Both Laura and Ollie work here. And then Claire just finished VCE, 18, and Henry just finishing year 10, 16. So
we've got another one right for the picking there.
Yes. Yeah, actually she has worked in an accounting firm before. So
There you go.
Line them up, ready to go.
I've trained them well. So maybe if we, talk about how becoming a mum changed your perspective on your career, because we've talked about the juggle already, and that'll probably be a theme throughout the whole podcast. But how did it change things for you in your career, Amy?
For me, it actually dragged me back into accounting. So I had worked in accounting firms for a long time and sort of got to a point in my career where this wasn't for me. I'm not passionate about it. I want to do something different. I wanted to do something in the community. So I left the industry and went to work for a community service. But it was a government community service and I wasn't able to get the flexibility after I had my child to continue that role. And being professional services, generally, especially in an admin role, it's easy to get part-time. So for my career trajectory, I had gotten out of accounting to do something completely different, and it actually put me back into it because I was able to get a part-time role. So I was able to still have a career, but also still be a mum. I came back like 3 days a week. But even now, it's the struggle for me because I am someone who is quite ambitious and I do want to go really far in my career. But also I'm a single mum, so I also have that sort of added restriction that I'm the one that has to go get my daughter every day. I'm the one that has to be there to do pickups and drop-offs and parent her and love her. It's not just a matter of shuffling her about. Like, she also needs parent around. So it's my thing is I really am passionate about my career and my role that I have here, but have to be really conscious about how I'm spending my time and when I spend that time.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think lots of people will say that having children causes you to reprioritise and all of a sudden you prioritise your family more and you appreciate that. But for me, it is about just having these competing priorities that are totally different as well, like your career and what you do in the workplace and those ambitions and so forth are totally different to your what you want to achieve with your parenting.
And I think a lot of people as well automatically assume that when you have a child, that's your whole world.
Yeah.
And for some parents that might be the case, but also for me, like, I'm still a person and my career is still really important to me.
You have your needs as well.
And so many people just say, oh, you'll never regret the time you spend with your kids. I don't, but I would also regret if I lost my career.
Yeah.
And I think so many women are pushed or encouraged to say, oh, just focus your time on your children. When they're older, then you can have your career. Well, actually, we are super women and we can do it all. It's
just trying to fit more in.
Correct, exactly.
What about you, Teagan?
I guess for me, when I first started out, I was all about my career. Like, I was fresh out of uni, starting a professional career, and I was just, throwing myself in there and really had no desire to be a mother. Obviously, as time went on and I got older, that desire became more and more. Obviously, I met my husband and, we always wanted to have kids. It was just a matter of time when we were going to. So it was definitely a reality check because, like, I would get home from work and I'd be, on my emails and not have to worry about anything else. Whereas now it's like, come to work, finish the day, get home, do the meals, do the cooking, get the kids to bed, and then occasionally check a few emails. So it doesn't really stop. I used to love my sleep, and as, having children, you learn to just live with 5 hours sleep if you need to, or sometimes you get 8. But yeah, no, it's definitely changed how I love my job, and I definitely didn't want to give that up. A lot of my friends, don't return to work until their kids are at school. I returned to work for both my children when they were 6 months old. So, definitely about spending time with them, and also, as Amy said, still developing my career. So.
I think for me, I did change the way I approached things, not so much in time. I think I just learned to multitask even more.
You do.
It was just stretched all over the place. But it has changed my approach almost from I think when I first started out, I was much more, and this is probably also an age thing, but, probably more opinionated, more hot-headed. But now I would say I'm totally the opposite, and I think children did change me from a personal perspective in terms of having much more empathy and being far more patient, because you can't not be patient when you've got a child or 4. So it did change my approach to work, and I guess added more of a sort of empathetic personal perspective and also appreciating what other team members might be going through a lot more. Yep. Because we all have different issues, and just because you have children, it doesn't suddenly mean you've got all these other things you've got to juggle. People are juggling all sorts of things. But I think just being more mindful of what other people might be going through in the workplace, and providing that support around them, especially now we're all in leadership roles, and so we're sort of caring for these little beings at home, or mine are big beings, and then also caring for team members, which makes it, workplaces are often like families in that respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think the other thing as well, you mentioned about having more empathy, but boy, don't your negotiation skills skyrocket.
Yeah, that's true too.
If you have a toddler, or like, I think you and I are both in the same position. Our daughter's not that different in age, and the stubbornness that you have to push through definitely comes in handy when you come to work sometimes, and you have to put some of those tough negotiations in place.
Yeah. What do you think would be the most rewarding parts of being a working mum? And obviously the challenges. There are lots of challenges. I'm sure we could reel off lots of challenges, but it's actually quite hard to sort of think of the rewarding parts of being a working mum. Like, obviously there's rewarding parts of being a parent and rewarding parts of having a career, but, combining them together. Is there anything really good that comes out of that?
I think for me, as we sort of mentioned earlier, being able to maintain a career, and I also took quite a big leap in my career when I came here as well. So I was at home, and I, have my child, and I'm a single parent doing all those things, but I'm still able to fulfill my position and do really well in it. And I think that for me as a person is a great achievement for me. And I think, wow, like that I'm able to do both. And then even just my daughter, when she's playing at home, she has her little iPad out, and she, can hear her role playing, and she sort of say something like, ask the client manager, or it's a question about the account, and she's sort of like role playing that, career business woman, and I just think I feel like
seen
I'm
you
being
do
a
it,
good
yeah.
role model
Yeah,
to her. When I grew up, my mum was a stay-at-home mum, so the way I imagined being a mum was staying at home, baking and doing activities, and that's what I would role play. I was very big playing with dolls and being a mummy, but then hearing my daughter at home role playing being an accounting operations manager, I think that's so rewarding that I'm able to lead that example to her and teach her the responsibilities. We have to get up every day and we get dressed and we go to work, and these are the things we do and these are why we do it. That for me is so valuable for myself to have my own pride in what I'm doing, but also to lead that example to her.
Yep.
And I think for our young men as well that we're raising, being more mindful of, and respecting women in the workplace and breaking down those stereotypes from yesteryear, and growing up to be really responsible, lovely young men, and also taking on the role of parent. There are far more dads, like when we're talking about being working mums here, we could just as easily have working dads, working parents, because there are lots of people doing that juggle, regardless of whether one of the partners is sort of working at home.
Do you find that, obviously being in a married dynamic, that your husband sort of has a bit more of that, like, sort of, I guess for me, when I was growing up, it was mostly the mums are taking care of the kids and the dads are working and providing for the family. Do you find that that is a different dynamic in your...
Definitely. I think in this day and age, obviously, you need to divide and conquer, and, gone were the days where the men went to work and the women stayed home. We both share the load as much as we possibly can. I do the daycare drop-offs and my husband does the daycare pickups. He spends a couple of hours with them when he gets home, and then I get home from work, and that's our family time. So it's definitely he's definitely hands-on, which you definitely need. It's not all reliant on me. Yeah, as soon as he hits the pillow at night, he's asleep, whereas myself, I lay awake for, hours and hours, and what have I got to cook tomorrow? What appointments have I got? What do the kids need? Are their childcare bags packed? So much going through my head, and I just look at him and I'm like, how are you possibly asleep? And then I wake up tired and he wakes up all bubbly, and I'm like, there you go. So definitely, we do share the load, but I still think of, paying the bills and getting all that stuff done, whereas he thinks once his job's done and the kids are in bed, that's it.
And I think that's the thing, it's the mental load that everyone talks about as well. It's not just the who's bathing the children, who's putting them to bed. It's who's making sure that they're immunised, that they've got a haircut, that they've been to the dentist.
Yes.
That's all the extra stuff that is constantly in the back of your mind as a working parent as well. Like yourself, you're probably thinking about all the things you need to do for your clients, and then all the things that you need to do for your family as well, and then for your team members. There's just that constant stream of to-do.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, do you think that's a personality thing, or do you think it's a female thing that we tend to take on that mental load a lot more? I don't, because there are lots of full-time dads that are the main carers for kids, but I still don't think they take on the mental load quite as much. Yeah. Or don't sweat the small stuff as much, and maybe that's a personality thing rather than gender specific.
Yeah, and potentially that's it for them to know that, the doctor will send me a reminder when they're due for their immunisations, whereas for me it's like, is that due? Is it coming up? Is it ready yet? So it probably is a little bit personality and a little bit just, I guess, still a bit of that expectation that's the mum's role to make sure that those things happen.
It's necessary to have those organisational skills, I guess, when you are trying to juggle so many things and stay organised and manage your time and create time for yourself.
And I think the other thing for me, it's a double-edged sword for me. Like, I love coming to work because I switch into work mode and I'm just focusing on my team, the work that needs to be done, what's happening at work. But then at the end of the day, I kind of it's like a bit of a guilty feeling. I haven't thought about my child the whole day but then it eases that load, because when I'm at work, she's at daycare, they're taking care of her. If there's any problem, they'll give me a call. I can turn that part of my mind off. I can just focus on my work and get that done. So I think that's another blessing of being a working mum, is you sort of get that time out once you're able to switch in And I also try very consciously to do the vice versa. So once I leave work, once I close the door, I'm a mum now. I'm not an employee. I'm not thinking about work. I go home and I pick up my daughter and I'm fully present with her, and then try to switch off the work time to give her the same undivided attention that my work gets when I'm at work.
I think that's one thing I find really difficult to switch off. And I think because I have always worked from home quite a bit, and so it's very difficult to separate the two things. So I'll have, emails going on the kitchen bench, or I'll be trying to do something while I watch TV, and that guilt that you mentioned before, that's probably the most challenging thing about being a working mum for me. That constant guilt that you're not present enough for your children. You might be letting things slip at work, just, being late home, not getting there in time for pickup, not having food in the cupboard, those sorts of things. The guilt is...
The guilt is never ending. And even in a good week where you feel really good that you've done, really good job with your work and you've planned an activity to do with the kids on the weekend, there's still guilt because for me, like, my child's in daycare most days, and then sometimes I lay in bed and I'm like, that's her childhood. Her childhood is being dropped off at daycare and being picked up. It works for her and it works for me, but I still feel guilty that that's her childhood. And even though it's what needs to be done and it works and no one's unhappy in it, I still just feel that guilt that, I'm not the mum that can go take her to the play centre on Thursday morning and hang out there because we've got other things that we need to do. And then on the flip side of that as well, like if there's work events on after work and things like that, I can't go to them because that's my daughter's time, and then it's that guilt that I'm not there. I'm not being able to participate in those.
Yeah, or you're not being a leader by being
Correct.
there. Yeah, I think in both places you're being stretched.
Yeah, you can never be fully everything everywhere. And no matter how well you balance it, there's always a guilt.
But that's what I think we try to do. We try to be everything to everyone. And, it's really hard. Like that guilt it's such a negative, I know in my mind it's such a negative, unhelpful emotion to have, that guilt. And I know I need to let go of it, but it's just really difficult to do. And then it's like, well, what do you let go? Do you, when you've got clients, so, I might have clients that are dying and that need, urgent wills done and that sort of thing. So I can't really go home and just say, sorry, kids, you're going to have to fend for yourself tonight and make your own dinner because I've got to focus on this bit of work, but then I can't let something terrible happen without having done my job. So that is really difficult.
And I think like every time that you do have to make that choice, it's gut-wrenching every time.
Definitely.
And I think it's sometimes easier to choose the work because it always is a time pressure. Whereas like for me, okay, I'm meant to leave at this time to go pick up my child. Oh, it's just an extra hour. I'll get that done at work. And I feel like so often work wins those split second choices because you feel like, oh, it doesn't really matter whether I'm there at 4:30 or 5:30. But then you look back and you get home and all of a sudden it's a big rush and you're sort of a little bit impatient because you are behind time and bath time is due and bedtime is due. It's a really fine line that you have to walk.
And I think if you're working at home too, it's easy to find something to entertain the kids, now mine are grown up, but when they were little, find something to entertain them by, putting the Wiggles on or something. That might not be a thing now. I don't know.
It's definitely still a thing.
The Wiggles was huge when my kids were little, to the extent that when I was working, I'd be driving to work and I'd still have the Wiggles playing in the car, and then I'd be singing along, toot, toot, chugga, chugga, and then I'd realise that I don't have any kids in the car. I don't have to have that music on.
Changing the radio is just one thing you don't need to add to your day. Like, that's just another task.
You don't
We'll
even
just roll
realise
with
it. Just bopping along as if it's, top 40 or something.
It's probably good because it's like always upbeat and positive, so set you up in a good frame of mind before you get to work.
Good messages. Yeah. What about the support that we need to be able to manage that juggle? Particularly support from the workplace. We talk about it takes a village to raise a child. So what do you think of that? Like, what sort of support?
Definitely the
is important?
flexibility at Aintree Group. Like, yes, I have my job, but I also want to be able to, when my kids go to school, attend assemblies or attend a sports day, or check out for a couple of hours a day if they need, just so that they still feel like, yeah, mummy's works, but she can also come to these things when I need her to. And Aintree Group's really good like that. They're very flexible in terms of start times and finish times. As mentioned before, obviously I do the drop-off, so I'm always in the office a bit later, and then obviously I finish later. But, they're always accommodating to, children being sick. You try to get carers in where you can so you can come to work, but that's not always an option. I'm very lucky I have my lots of family around to help. My mum watches the kids 1 day a week, and then they're in daycare 3 days a week, but then there's Fridays with me. So if I'm ever missing time during the week, I try not to do it on a Friday so I can be present with the kids on my one day that I have them. But, sometimes I just need to. And Aintree Group, they're really good like that in terms of recognising that we're working mums, and we've got also jobs to do at home, and children that need us, especially when they're quite young.
Yeah, I think that flexibility is probably the key thing, being able to work from home, also being able to not work from home if you don't,
Yes.
because that's really hard if you have got little kids at home and you're actually trying to get work done at the time, but also being able to work odd hours. So I think just that trust is really important, like having an employer that just trusts that you will get the job done, that you're doing the hours you need to do, and just have that reciprocal trust there.
Yeah.
And I think that flexibility is important, not just to be permitted, but to actually be encouraged in the workplace. So where Aintree Group's actually saying, no, we want you to take the afternoon off to go and watch the kids play sport or something like that, like actually encourage you to take the time rather than, yes, okay, we'll approve it, or yes, that's okay, you're allowed to do that. Just actually encouraging it, and not just for working parents, but, well, everyone's a working parent that is working, but even if you're not the main carer and there is another partner that's at home caring for the kids, so maybe for some of the dads here, actually encouraging them to take time out of their work week to go and be there for those important events. Yeah, I think that's really important.
The transition back to work, Shane and Andrew weren't expecting me to come back, back to my 4-day capacity straight after returning to work. They were allowing me to, do, 15 hours a week, do them when you can, as long as you get what you need to get done. We'll take a little bit of the responsibility off you just so you can slowly transition back to work. And I found that really helpful. Instead of going from being at home for 12 months and then returning straight back to 4 days, I was able to come back after 6 months, on a two-day capacity, and just slowly transition my way into it, back up to the 4 days, I definitely found that helpful, not being thrown straight into the deep end. And obviously, when your child first starts childcare, being so young, they get sick every 5 minutes. They pick up everything that they possibly can, and then you get sick and the rest of the family gets sick. So it was definitely important to be able to, come back on a part-time basis and still feel like I was, doing part of like my job and, contributing to the business. Made me feel like, I wasn't just a mum. I was able to still pick up where I sort of left off on a part-time basis.
What about for you, Amy? Because I know your daughter's been in the office sometimes working with an official lanyard as well.
Genevieve is now an official team member of Aintree Group as a junior assistant, and she tells everyone that she meets in the street that she's a junior assistant, which I also love because then it just goes back to the fact of setting that example for her. So she's got her little lanyard with her little ID badge on it, which she's very proud of. I think the village is something that really is a myth in this day and age. There's some people that are really lucky and have a lot of support. Has not really been my experience. I'm lucky that I have sort of my mum and my sister are available to me to help out. Other than that, I'm really on my own. I don't feel like there is a village to help me out, and it is on me. My mum was amazing when I first returned to work. So I was working 3 days and my mum would have my daughter 2 days a week. So it was amazing. And I just felt good that she was in a family environment then. There's a very big difference in, I don't know if you have the same thing, but in my gut when she's with family versus when she's at daycare. So I love the fact that I went back to work when she was 8 months old. So she was still a little baby. She wasn't even walking at that point, but she was at home with my mum. Like if it's not me, it's my mum, you know, it's the next best thing. But my mum, was diagnosed with cancer at the end of last year. And obviously that meant that she could no longer take care of her. So I would, before if I was stuck at work or had to work back late, I had really alleviated that guilt because I could call my mum and say, hey, can you go pick Genevieve up from daycare? And then I just felt she was at home, she was with her nana and her grandpa, and she's getting cuddles and kisses and, you know, running around naked if she wants to, like, you know, just being at a home environment. Whereas now, because I don't sort of have that backup, that guilt has just increased so much because I know that if I am late or I have to put her in for an extra day of care for whatever reason, she's then at daycare in that sort of more educational environment. Her daycare is great. There's nothing against them, but it's a very different environment and they have to be on their best behaviour. They can't be naughty. They can't be silly. If they don't particularly want to do that activity.
They can't run around naked.
They can't run around naked.
Definitely not.
So I think like anyone with a village, I just hope that they realise how grateful that they are.
Yeah.
And for me, I guess like Aintree Group is kind of my village because there's been some days when I've had to do things in the office. I'd need to be physically present. And instead of having to put her in the extra day of daycare, I can just bring her in.
Yeah.
All the team is so amazing, like entertaining her and keeping her busy. And she's also very good. She understands that when she comes into work that she needs to be quiet, use a low voice and all these kind of things. But it just really makes, for me, I have to be really decisive and I have to be really strict on where my time is. And if I choose to stay back for an hour, then I'm very conscious that I need to make that time back with my daughter. So if that means she loves sleeping in my bed, so that night probably it's going to be a sleepover night or something like that. And then when I'm not at work, to give her that full 100% care because she's either in daycare or she's with me. Like there's no village outside of that.
That's really good that you can be that disciplined with it and set those boundaries.
Yeah.
I think that's something I have trouble with.
I think that's the only way I can live with the guilt feeling, even though I know I'm giving everything I can. The only way to live with that guilt is to know that sometimes I have to make the difficult decision, like especially if I'm working on a project and I'm so passionate about it and I could work 60 hours a week to get it done, I have to say no to myself. And then like what you said, like with the working outside of time, if that is the case and I have got more work I either want to do or need to do, it's once she's gone to bed. She goes to bed. She's not going to know any different if I'm watching TV or if I'm working, but I just try to make it that it's not in her time. So once I've picked her up from daycare until she goes to bed, that time is completely hers.
But then when's your time?
People ask me
that's the problem.
and I don't know if you have the same thing that like, but you know, if you meet someone, you're like, oh, what are
do.
your hobbies? What are you into? Like, what do you do in your spare time? What is spare time?
No spare time. I find myself, I'll work until, 11 o'clock or whatever once the kids have gone to bed. And then I'll find myself sitting down just watching trash TV because that's my time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to think about anything. And then before I know it, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, okay, I really need to go to bed.
But I also find that if I don't do that, because I'm also very guilty of that, once everything is done, you need to have that time to yourself. And I feel like if I did that and then I just went to bed because I need the sleep, I would feel worse in the morning because you're starting again. You don't feel like you're getting a break. Whereas at the end of the day, if you do take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to scroll TikTok, look at Facebook, look at Instagram, watch some Kardashians, whatever it is, you actually feel like you've had a break. Whereas if you just go to sleep, you get the sleep, but then you feel like it hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. For me, having that time to myself is more valuable than sleep. Like we've proven we can live without sleep during the newborn phase. So I think to be able to just continue to function, you've got to have that downtime over sleep. For me, that's more important.
And as Teagan said, it's actually hard to sleep too when
Yes.
you've got so many things in your mind. And I think you get used to, as soon as you have a child and you're used to getting up to them during the night, you just wake up at the drop of a hat. Like there won't even be, a child will creep into the room and then all of a sudden, as soon as they step on into your room, you just wake up.
Yeah. And it's even, I don't know.
Sleep so lightly.
You almost anticipate them waking up and you feel like you wake up right before they do. Like so there must be something in the way that they stir that it's coming. Or if they're sick, you somehow instinctively know that they're about to be sick.
Or just as you're about to get to sleep, they wake up. It's like, oh,
no.
really?
Yes,
it's great timing.
When you've had that time when you've stayed up later than you should have.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, no, I've really got to get to bed now. You just start to drift off and then, Mum, no.
When they're babies and you hear the tiniest little noise and then you wake up.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, no, not yet. And then you're just waiting.
Like when they're at home with a really young one and they're having a nap and you've just got that 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, and then you hear the rustle in the monitor. And I can remember sitting there looking at them and just like, please, go back to sleep. Just go back to sleep. I'm not ready yet. I still need that quiet time.
I remember with Laura, she was a terrible sleeper. And the only way I could get her to sleep was actually to have the vacuum cleaner running in her room. And it started because I would vacuum and she'd fall asleep while I was vacuuming. So I thought, oh, this is good. And then I just couldn't keep vacuuming the house all the time. I just got so sick of it. So I actually just put the vacuum on in her room.
No way.
But then it blew up.
Oh.
So I was so lucky because it was running for so many hours in the day that the vacuum actually blew up.
Oh my gosh.
So
see, Genevieve was the opposite and you could not have a single noise. I was that person that had the sign on the door. Any visitors, deliveries, hawkers. If you knock on the door, you will have the wrath of me to deal with because that's going to set the dog off, which is going to set the baby off. And Genevieve was a colic baby, so she screamed basically 20 out of 24 hours a day. And even to this day, she's a 5 now and I still creep around the house at night. I still close, like if there's a loud noise, I still flinch like, oh no, she's going to start screaming. She's 5, but just that experience of having a young child that never slept and never stopped crying, I feel like I'm always going to have that level of like anxiety around loud noises from that experience. Oh.
Do you think there's still a stigma around working mums? Like, in the past, I think there was a fair bit of judgment sometimes from some people, because you were stretching yourself so thin and not there all the time for your child. Do you think that stigma still exists or do you think we've overcome that?
No, I don't know about you. I get it, and even from within my own family, I get a lot of comments because I've got a very large extended family. I still get a lot of, so you just ship your kid off to daycare, do you? As if the guilt is not hard enough.
Yeah, exactly.
From your
I think it's definitely still there, but I think it's reduced a little bit because I think a lot of people understand now that you need 2 incomes to survive.
Yeah.
You can't stay at home until your child's at school age. You've got mortgage to pay, you've got food to put on the table. Unfortunately, in this day and age with the cost of living, it is what it is. And I think people are starting to understand that you've just got to do what you got to do to survive. And
But do you find that people are encouraging you having a career versus you having just a job to make ends meet?
I think so, yeah. Part and parcel, yeah. I think you get both. You get, as you said, how can you send your child to daycare? They're only 6 months old or 9 months old. They're still babies. You're going to miss that time when they grow older and they're at school. You still definitely get that. But a lot of my friends, they, are working mums too. And, you just got to make the most of the weekends and spend family time together. I mean, there's always chores to do, cooking and cleaning and washing and all that fun stuff. But I try to just spend the time where I can with the kids on the weekends as a family. And know that, you do get mum guilt when you drop them off and they don't want to go. I don't want to go to daycare today. Well, unfortunately, you have to because mummy needs to go to work to make money to buy you things. And that's the reality. So it's definitely hard.
I think we also, for me, I have a lot of it myself and I probably overly justify it as well. I think we feel probably more guilt than what other people judge us, if that makes sense. So when I do need to leave early, I feel like I need to justify why I need to leave early, even though that's the agreement of my employment. I still feel like sometimes I have to justify that, but I'm going to be online later, or, I got all my work done, or something like that, to kind of, you feel like you need to prove yourself above someone who can come in and do whatever hours they need to do, or, aren't leaving early. Yeah. For me personally, I feel like I often over justify what I'm doing and when I'm doing.
Because you're harder on yourself
Correct.
than anyone else is, really.
Yeah, because I remember I posted, it was like a reel on Instagram or something about it, and it was exactly that situation. It was a parent, was a mother, leaving the office and sort of shouting out all these justifications, but I'm going to be online later, I'm going to be online. And Andrea saw it and she messaged me, she's like, that's not the experience in the office. I was, no, but what it is that's the experience that you feel. Yeah. It's never anyone else makes you feel that way, but you feel like for me, I feel the need that I need to justify it and sort of prove myself that, yes, I'm leaving earlier, but I've done all my work and this is everything that I've achieved.
And how do you think we could overcome that? Or is there anything that, say, the workplace could do to help us over? Or is it just really a personal thing? We've just got to try and
It really is, because Shane and Andrea are always amazing with giving me feedback, and sort of I have got a really close communication with them. So I know that I'm achieving everything that I need to achieve, but I really think it's just a personal thing. But then, interestingly, I don't have the same on the other side. Like, I never feel the need to justify to my child that, I'm giving you all this time and attention and this is what we're going to be doing. It's just, I don't know why.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Maybe it is because of that societal expectation that we think that we need to, justify it to the workplace.
Yeah.
I don't think until you're a mum or, a parent, you don't understand. Like, I used to... When I was younger, working full time, you'd see the mums leave and you'd be like, where are they going? What are they doing? But now, it's like, I get it. You've got to do it. And, everyone in the office is very, very aware and accommodating. And I think the culture and the foundation of we're a family, we help each other when we need. I might not get something done, but there's always someone there that can step in and help. And, definitely the family dynamics here is, definitely helps the situation.
And that's a definite thing with the workplace for me, is having a team around me that I can reliably trust, that if I need to hand something over to them, that they're going to get it done. So it's sort of all the things that we're responsible for, being able to share that workload around so that all of the things that fall under your own umbrella are all getting done, are all getting achieved, but it's because of the support of the wider team. It's not just all on you to carry.
I guess that's why one of the reasons why they're putting all the processes in place as well, so
Correct.
that other people can pick up things where you leave off, for example, or if you're away or something happens and someone's sick. And
I think that also really alleviates the guilt as well, so that if all of a sudden, someone comes down sick, that everything's already in place for someone to step into your shoes. Whereas if it was, you've got a sick child and you're trying to be on the phone giving instructions.
I've done that.
Because that's a hard thing as well. Like, it's so much easier to just say, actually, my child is sick. I just need to look after them in the best world. That's not always the case, but knowing that there's systems and procedures in place that at worst, if you were suddenly off the radar, someone else can just walk in and pick it up, is a big relief for you, knowing it's not everyone's just left in the lurch.
Is there anything that you wish non-parents understood about being a working mum? Because you touched on it before, Teagan, when you said that, before you had kids, you just can't really understand what it's like. And I think even within parent groups, you cannot ever really understand what it's like for anyone else in their particular circumstances. So for me, I think I just, wish everybody, whether they're parents or non-parents, and as you touched on before, Amy, often it's the other parents that have that judgment around whether you're working and not spending enough time with your child or whatever. So it's often actual fellow mums that are the harshest critics. Yeah. So I think just for me, the one thing I wish everyone would be is just be kind.
Yeah.
Just be kind to each other and just and have that empathy for what other people might be going through, even if you can't understand it. Because I don't think you can ever really understand what it's like to be a parent when you're not a parent, and you vice versa as well. Once you're a parent, you can never really go back and sort of understand how, like, the young people that don't have that responsibility, how they feel, because you can't really remember what it was like. It's sort of, you can't really remember what it was like pre-kids once you've got them. So I think just the one message I have is just be kind to each other. So
I think for me, like, it's not so much what they would understand about being a working mum, because and even like an experience from one working to a mum is
totally different.
If you're not, just appreciate the time that you have. Like, for my thing, looking back to pre-parenthood, what did I do with my time? Like, I can't imagine what it is to leave work and just go home and watch TV or go to the gym or just sort of have your own time. I think that's one big thing, is just like, time is so precious and you need to maximize the most of everything, especially when we're trying to jam so much in. I think for me, it goes along with being kind, but it's also appreciate that the time is really limited. So sort of when I'm at work, I want to make the most of all my work. And when I'm with my child, I want to make the most of that. And I would just say that that's one thing that, if anything that other people could understand, is the real tight limitations on our time. Like, every minute in my day is planned and is overfull. So that's one thing probably I would ask other people to understand, is that if, you know, it seems like you're rushing or you seem to be impatient or you seem to be sort of pushing through things, it's not because of anything.
Lack of care or
lack of, it's just because we've got to keep pushing to fit everything in. You've got to just keep going. There is no such thing as downtime.
But I guess that's human nature, to always be looking to the next thing. Like, when we were kids, I can't wait till I'm growing up. And, you know, now we say to our kids, enjoy the time, you know, when you're carefree and you don't have to worry about working and, you know, like, especially that time when you finish school and before you start uni and you've actually got nothing to do except party, you know, have fun, but you're always looking to the next thing. You know? And then when you're working, it's like, when this happens, when I get older and I retire, I can then travel more, or I can then do this. So I think we have a natural tendency to always look to the next thing. Or when you're in that baby phase and you say, I just can't wait till they're a couple of years older and, you know, then I'm not having to get up in the night and do this. But then it's always something. It's, you know, when they're older, we'll do this. But then you have other issues, you know, when they're teenagers and you have more things like mental health concerns and
they're driving cars.
Driving,
and,
yes.
You know,
Well,
all that sort of stuff.
just
Yes,
an
Got
experience.
that next
So
worry, you know, I'm going to make it home, and you know
they're different types of worries, and even as adults, like our parents still would worry about us. You know, like I remember, you know, 5 years ago when I went through my divorce, my parents, like, I could see them go back into that parenting role of being so worried about their child. And even though most of my kids are adults now, I still worry about them all the time and still take on that motherly role. I mean, I still make Laura and Oliver's lunches. They come in with their sandwiches or their salads or whatever it is. They'll be so embarrassed that I said that. But yeah, I think we have a natural tendency to do that. And when you were talking, Amy, I kept thinking about that. Have you listened to that book or read that book, 4,000 Weeks? Oh, you should read it. It's all about time. And, yeah, it's great. It's a bit scary because we've only got 4,000 weeks to live.
And I think that's one thing that people do, and they think it's maybe quirky or something like that, but it's really not, and it terrifies me as a mum whose daughter is really transitioning out of that baby toddlerhood into childhood, especially looking to school. And they'll say something like, well, you really only get 6 Christmases. like, well, okay, my daughter's now 5. So does that mean that that's ending? And they'll say stuff like, oh, they're only babies once, or okay, but then I'm not being able to enjoy the moment because now I'm terrified to lose it rather than just organically going through these stages. And I remember I was never the mum that was, oh, I can't believe she's already won. She was a horrible newborn and I could not wait to I was celebrating every day that passed. We're further away from having a newborn. But then now that she's 5 and I look back at videos from her when she was 1 and 2, I'm like, she was so cute. And then it kind of feels like it's another child that you've lost because that child doesn't exist anymore. She's grown and she's evolved. But when you look back, you're like, oh, I miss that.
Yeah, I think you forget about the bad stuff. But that's like with everything. You know, if you go on a holiday and it's a nightmare at the time with little kids and, you know, it's not a holiday at all for the parents. It's never a holiday for the parents. But at the time you think, oh, this was such a bad idea. Why did we ever think that we would? Well, for example, for my 40th birthday, we went around France in a camper van. Like I always wanted to go to France for my 40th birthday. I didn't want to party or anything like that. So we took the 4 little kids and we had a camper van and we toured around France. And at the time, like there were some really tough days when, you know, someone would have a tantrum and you're all in this tiny little space together. But now I look back at it and I think, oh my gosh, that was so wonderful. You know, it was such a good experience. And I think you do sort of forget about the hard things. Otherwise, we wouldn't go back for more children either.
That's why we didn't go back for more children because we didn't forget how hard it was. I think a lot of people say that. But I think it's just softer over time.
Yeah.
But for me, like pregnancy was really challenging. We had a lot of complications. She was reflux and colic as a baby. She was an awful child. She never slept. I could never put her down. Like the whole experience was so traumatic to me that when I was pregnant, I knew I was never going to have any more kids.
Okay.
And that has never faded for me. That was so much. I can't imagine why anyone ever goes back for 1 more or 3 more. Like for me, incomprehensible. Like to go through that again.
And I guess that's why we're all different.
And that's the experience that you have and the person that you are. For other people, it might be the drive to have a second child would overcome any of those challenges. For me, I just wanted a daughter. Once I found out it was a girl, I'm done. Like that's all I wanted. So it just depends on, I think, the reason why you wanted to have a family in the first place and what type of family that you wanted. I always said if I had a girl, I would be happy with 1. And then the experience that I had just solidified that decision for me, that was it. We're 1 and done.
Yeah, I always wanted a big family. I always wanted 4 kids, but had a lot of trouble having kids. So they're actually IVF. So I was very lucky that all worked. But, you know, it was a journey over many years. And I think part of talking about the guilt, like that resonates so strongly with me because I'd worked so hard to have kids and, you know, that was what I wanted. And then once I had them, I found it hard at the time and I was like, I shouldn't be, I wanted this so much and yet this is really hard, like with the crying and because the first 2 were really unsettled for me. That got easier as they went on. but yeah, I think you just feel guilt about everything. So it's probably being kind to yourself as much as anything.
And I think that's another thing that I was really lucky. I had a lot of support through my local council and through the maternal and child health service because Genevieve was a difficult baby and I really struggled with it. I got a lot of extra support. And one of the things I learned from there is it doesn't matter how much you wanted it, it's still okay to not enjoy it. There's so much pressure, like, you know, if you really wanted a baby, then why are you complaining about it? I love my child to the end of the earth and I did when she was this little newborn, but it was really hard and there were some days that I just didn't want to do it anymore. And that's one thing that I think that all young, whether they're a mum or a dad, it doesn't matter. But if you wanted a child, it's okay to say, this is no fun.
Yeah.
This is really hard. This actually sucks. That's okay to have those feelings. It doesn't mean that you don't love your child or you're not grateful or for whatever you went through to get that child. It's okay to have those feelings because they are real and sometimes very valid.
Yeah. And I think that's important to remember that they are valid feelings. So, because it becomes not about you anymore, Teagan. We were talking just in the car park last night about how, you know, you've got Henry's first birthday coming up and it's like it's all about this big, event.
Yep.
It's not really about him so
No.
much, and it's definitely
Nor
not
is he
about
gonna
you
remem-
celebrating
No,
what.
nor is he going to remember
Yeah,
it, but
yeah.
it's more for everybody else. And
And Mother's Day is never about you. It's always, it's always your mother, or it's, you have to become quite selfless, I think.
You do, yep.
But it's really important, and I just don't think I think women just grapple with this the whole time, we know in our minds that we need to make time for ourselves, that, we need to eat well, exercise, find time for mindfulness. Like, we know all these things that we have to do, but it's really hard to do it.
And it's always at the bottom of
Always
the list.
bottom priority, yep.
Yeah, because you think, you could even be at work. You know what? Tonight I'm going to go home. Once the kids are in bed, I'm going to run a bath and I'm going to do a facial and I'm going to wash my hair and all these things. But then you get home, didn't hang out the laundry.
too exhausted to do all that.
I'm too tired. It's like, actually, I just want to lay in my bed and do nothing. But the best things for us, all the things, and it almost feels selfish sometimes to do it, because you're then choosing yourself over something that you could be doing for your family or for your work, or I haven't called that friend back. I just feel like, and I don't know if this is just a human nature thing or particularly a mum thing, but your self-care is always at the bottom of the list because you're too busy caring for and taking care of everything else.
We could probably talk for hours about this, but I'm sure we're getting a wind up here. So maybe if we finish with one piece of advice that you would have for aspiring young mums.
I
going
suppose
back to
just
work.
because you've become a mum doesn't mean, you have to stop your career. You can definitely do both. And I'm sure us three and all the other working mums and dads have shown that. So always got to put your family first. And Aintree, Shane and Andrew always say, families first, work second. But us women, we want to do everything.
Yeah.
We don't want to say no to things, regardless of how tired we are. We just want to say yes. So that's probably my key.
Yeah. I would 100% echo that. The number one piece of advice I would have for an aspiring working mum is, yes, do it, because you deserve to have a career and a life outside of your family if that's what you want. Nothing wrong with being someone who wants to dedicate themselves to their family, but if you do want to work as well, I would just say make sure that whatever you are doing, you are passionate about and you love it, because I couldn't do what I do if I didn't absolutely love my job. I would have so much more guilt and so much more resentment if I was leaving my child in daycare to go do something that didn't fill my cup. If it was, I've got to go to work and it sucks and I've got to deal with all this stuff, I couldn't do it. And the guilt then dropping off my child. When I drop off my child now, I feel guilty that I'm not with her, but I'm also then excited because I'm going to get to work and I'm going to do all these things. So if you are going to do it, just make sure you're doing something that you love and that you're passionate about and that there's a future there for you. Don't become a working mum just for the sake of going in to pay bills. Then you're going to struggle, I feel,
find
so
something
much.
that you
find
enjoy.
something that you, and it doesn't have to be, some
have to be
high-flying
perfect
career.
either.
If you love working in a cafe because you get to have chats with people all day long that you don't normally get that human interaction, do that, but just find something that you enjoy while you're there so that you can at least balance that guilt.
I think my main message, as I said before, is to just be kind to yourself more than anyone. Don't be hard on yourself. We get things wrong all the time, but just keep on doing it and being kind. I think that's probably about it. So thank you for listening, everyone, to this episode of Plant, Grow, Reap. And a huge thank you to my co-hosts, Amy and Teagan, for sharing their experiences as working mums so honestly and openly. Subscribe to Plant, Grow, Reap on your preferred podcast platform, and we'll see you next time.